When it comes to running tabletop role-playing games, you as a game master wear a lot of different hats. You're an organizer, you're a referee, and you're a creative artist. Creativity is what helps us create our campaign worlds, our adventures, our adventure locations, our NPCs and monsters, and so on. And it can take a lot of energy to build fun, interesting, and engaging opportunities for your players to explore, which is why it can feel really frustrating to hit the dreaded writer's block. It's bound to happen to most of us at some point. You sit down to type out your notes on whatever you need to design next for your upcoming game, only to draw blank. You stare at the empty Word document for some substantial amount of time before realizing you are getting nowhere. But if you're a game master that's lucky enough to have a regularly scheduled game, you can't always wait for inspiration to strike. You need to develop some material before your next session starts. Hi, welcome back aboard the Earthmote. I'm Randall. Today we're talking about a few different techniques that you can use to break through that dreaded writer's block and get back to designing great material for your tabletop role-playing games. First method for breaking writer's block is to borrow from other media sources. In Austin Kleon's book, Steal Like an Artist, he talks all about how creative people are borrowing and blending ideas from different sources of inspiration. Running adventures for your players should be no different. Look to different sources of media for inspiration in creating material for your own game. Of course, you can borrow from the classics of your genre, like if you're running a fantasy RPG, then borrowing from Robert E. Howard or J.R.R. Tolkien can make sense. Likewise, if you're running a sci-fi game, maybe you borrow from Frank Herbert or Isaac Asimov. But if your players are fans of the genre, then the chances of them noticing your borrowed material is going to increase quite dramatically. That's why I recommend borrowing from lesser known authors or artists in the genre, or borrow ideas from completely different genres and then twist them to fit the context of your game that you're running for your table. Borrowing characteristics from a Jane Austen character for an antagonist is going to be a lot less noticeable than placing the Harkonnens in your sci-fi role-playing game. You can take ideas from all sorts of media. TV, books, movies, video games are very common choices, but what about artwork or historical accounts? Life is stranger than fiction sometimes, and you can check out my video on the War of the Bucket if you'd like to learn more about that. Also, don't forget about other RPG materials that you already own. Can you borrow, blend, twist ideas from books that you already have and import them into your existing role-playing game? Borrowing from media is one of the easiest ways to break that creative writer's block. You can lift and place material as directly or indirectly as you'd like. You can use the material as a template to directly reference and rely on as you're preparing your game material. So that makes it a lot easier on you as you build out the material for your next session. If you're enjoying the video, would you consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel if you haven't already? That is one of the easiest methods to help boost the channel in the sea of content that is YouTube, and I really appreciate your support. Another great way to bust your creative blocks is to use some random tables to help get the ideas flowing. Random tables come in all different sorts of granularities. You can get tables for adventure ideas or location contents, monsters, and so on. Just make a few rolls on these different random tables that are relevant to the content you're trying to generate, and they should provide some basis for a creative jumping. Sometimes starting the design work is the hardest part. Once I get going, I find that the ideas start to flow a bit easier. So if you can get that jump start, then you're off to the races. And that's exactly what these random tables can help provide you with. When it comes to fantasy RPGs, I really like the Tome of Adventure Design, Worlds Without Numbers random tables, the First Edition Dungeon Master's Guide, the D30 booklets, and Raging Swan Press has a whole series of books that have lots of different great random tables. I've had a lot of great mileage out of all these different products, and I'd recommend checking them out if they seem of any interest to you. It's really up to you on how heavily you want to rely on the results that you get from the random tables. Some people really like trying to follow the results as closely as possible. I personally use them a bit more freely. If the results come up with a pretty clear idea and I like it, then that's easy enough for me to follow and I just go with it. But sometimes you get random results that are a little bit more opaque or nonsensical at first glance. In the case of those, you can re-roll them, but also sometimes maybe you just get an idea from looking at it that's only kind of partially following it or is totally different, but you've been sparked by the results nonetheless. That's totally fine. I just go with that. I will use the rolls to start as my launch point. But if I come up with something that I like as I'm working on it that's different than the random rolls, I guess I don't feel beholden to them, and neither should you. They're there to help spark your creativity, and where you go once your process is underway can be a bit unpredictable and deviate from the results of your rolls, and that's totally fine. The end goal is to just generate some interesting and fun content. Sometimes writer's block is a problem of options paralysis. We have so many different options to choose from that we don't know possibly where we should start or why. That freedom of choice unironically becomes our creative prison. That's why setting restrictions on our design choices can really help sharpen our ideas and narrow our focus, and it gives us kind of a starting place to work from. Mark Rosewater, the Magic the Gathering game designer, talks about how restrictions breed creativity. In his presentation, 20 Years, 20 Lessons Learned, he breaks down how the brain is efficient and lazy. If it has solved a problem before, it will use the same neural pathways to solve that problem again. That's problematic in creative design for role-playing games. If we want to tell different stories or create different adventures, then we don't want to use the same neural pathways because we're likely to repeat what we've already done in the past. So the trick he shares with the audience is to start your creative work from a different starting point. Use a different vantage point each time. That way you have to think differently about your game each time. He argues that restrictions are a valuable tool for your creative thought. If your creative process doesn't have any restrictions on it, you should actively force restrictions on yourself. He claims it will make you a better designer. These sentiments apply strongly to our RPG campaigns and the creativity that we pour into making them. If we make the choice to limit ourselves, we can actually come up with a lot of great ideas that we wouldn't have otherwise considered. Using these restrictions will help break through your creative blocks where you have no idea what you should be doing. Word pairings can be a useful tool for breaking those creative blocks because they help stimulate creativity by having you make associations and connect. You can use a series of triggering associations to help spark unique ideas or concepts about the problem you are facing. Most often word pairings are an adjective and a noun, but you can try different combinations to see what works best for your use case. You can also combine a couple of word pairings together to give you more substance to work with as you're trying to come up with different ideas for your content. Unusual combinations of word pairings are often seen as a feature, not a bug. They can help challenge your conventional thinking and get you out of your comfort zone to consider other ideas. Word pairings, unusual combinations, and sometimes opaque results do turn some people off. They just have a hard time with them, and that's totally okay. Use what tools make sense for you, but if you've never tried them before, I'd say they're worth at least trying out to see if there's something you can implement into your own creative process. There are free word pairing generators online that you can use. Most of them are generic rather than limited to your genre though, so you're going to get a wide range of words, which again can be a feature, not a bug, but just be aware of. I like different word pairing results I get from Mythic's Game Master Emulator 2nd Edition. There are meaning tables that are very specific to different ideas, such as adventure tones or character motivations. That little bit of extra refinement is really nice when I have a specific focus for my writer's block that I'm trying to break. One method for breaking creative block and generating ideas that I've been experimenting with is the use of tarot cards. Now, I'm not somebody that actually believes in tarot card readings in real life, but that doesn't mean their deep history can't be leveraged for our benefit when it comes to generating creative ideas. Tarot cards have a couple of advantages that I like. First is the tactile and visual stimulation of the cards. If you're using a physical deck, there is something nice about holding the cards and rearranging them that just helps me mentally connect with the ideas a bit more than staring at a computer screen. You can certainly use an online tarot deck and that would work perfectly well, but I think the physical aspect isn't something that should be overlooked. Secondly, tarot cards represent a gauntlet of themes, emotions, and archetypes. When I use the cards, I'm able to look at these different elements that are associated with the cards I've drawn, and I can try to puzzle them together to come up with different ideas. You can also just literally riff off the card's name or the depictions on the cards. For this style of generation, I like to usually draw a couple of cards, somewhere between 2 to 4, to see if I can come up with an idea based off of those. I do reference different tarot guides to have an understanding of the card's meanings. And also keep in mind, you can use the card's reversed meaning, which is essentially just taking the opposite of the standard meaning if you want to switch things up a bit. Another nice thing about the tarot cards is I can change up my pace of the interpretations. If I want to generate an idea quickly, I can just look at the card and its name to draw some quick associations. And if I want to think a bit deeper on it, I can slow things down by looking up the tarot meanings and develop my interpretations from there. So that's it. If you try out one or more of those methods, I have no doubt you'll be able to break through any creative blocks you're facing and get back to making lots of great material for your role-playing games. Let me know in the comments which of those is your preferred method for breaking those creative blocks, or which is just your favorite for generating content in general. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. It really does help the video out tremendously. Consider checking out Enchanted Nimbus, my monthly newsletter. Thanks for hopping aboard the Earthmote. I'll see you in the next one.